Hey gang, so the new numbers are out today, so I thought that we'd go ahead and do a little Sprintwatch. Also going to do something a little different today, just because they kind of gave us a heads up that this was going to be a very light roadmap roundup. So, let's get it. Okay, so just so that you know, the roadmap roundup is relatively short. There's a couple cool things in there that I'll kind of get into, but I'm going to kind of breeze past it because there are three other things I want to talk about before I go on vacation for 2 weeks. The first is I kind of want to talk about the Ironclad versus the Liberator. That's kind of a big topic. I now own both. I melted a few ships to get an Ironclad. I'll kind of go into that too, just kind of my thought process on that, but they jumped the price apparently, so maybe buy it in game. But I want to talk about the Drake versus the Ironclad versus the Liberator. I wanted to talk about medical gameplay, which I will probably talk about first. So I'll talk about medical gameplay, Ironclad plus the Liberator, and then CIG with the sale with Invictus, which is their big sort of mid-year sale. They also have Alien Week, which is coming up in June, but Invictus is really the one where all the ships come out to play. They always do well on it. They went over $700 million. So I thought I would talk about that because once again, you're kind of hearing a bunch of outside forces saying $700 and a billion years in development and we don't have a game. I thought I'd get into that just a hair at the very end, just to piss people off and get those fresh downvotes. So let's get into the roadmap roundup, and I'll have markers in the down below parts if you just want to skip to whatever topic you want to listen to. So roadmap roundup, notable changes for May 29th, 2024. Release view. The following cards have been added to the release view: MPUV Tractor, Ursa Medevac, Saber Firebird. And gonna get into why the Ursa Medevac, despite that trailer, is not as game-changing as that trailer made it seem. The following cards, and the Firebird is fine. Following cards have passed their final review and have been toggled to committed for Alpha 3.23.2. So this is kind of big because they said they were going to get these things into the 3.23.2 patch, but they were still tentative last time we did this. So item banks, with item banks, they're the things that you can kind of have armor sets, you can dump, and weapon sets, and anything else sets, pretty much anything that's an inventory item. Dump them into the item bank and they're available at the other item banks. So if you're just doing mining in a rock and a friend jumps on and says, hey, I'm going to do a bunker, you could go to an item bank and grab your combat gear anywhere that has those little item banks and then go to the bunker, as opposed to saying, well, crap, I'm in Daymar, my home port is Microtech, give me 30 minutes and I'll join you. Now you can just go to the item bank and grab your stuff that's in kind of this universal location. Will that be the way they run it forever? I don't know. Am I possibly getting that wrong? Probably, but I think that's how it'll work. The other big thing that it'll do is that if you have sub gear, you'll be able to reclaim it in the item bank if you lose it. So I have the little scissy knife that I really like that's kind of like a S shape. Really cool thing that they gave away for Christmas, Luminalia, a couple years back. One of my favorite knives. For whatever reason, I always break it out in like the first couple weeks of a patch, and a bug always wipes me out and I lose it. This way I'll be able to get it back. So item banks, kind of cool. Freight elevators, next level of cargo. That will take a huge adjustment from the traders, and they're going to have to really adjust the economy to make it worth it, or nobody is going to do it. So I would assume they're going to sort of rebalance the economy, and sort of like how it's been salvage for for the last year and a half, 2 years, it's going to switch to trade. They're going to want people trading, so that's going to be lucrative, which is going to be good for the pirates too. But basically you have the freight elevators, you have cargo that comes up on the freight elevators, vehicles too, and then you have to, so let's say that you buy something from a station or any location, it'll come up on these freight elevators and you'll have all the crates will be there on the freight elevator. Then you have to manually load your ship. Then you'll fly to another location, manually load all of that cargo onto the cargo elevator at that location, send it down. Then it's going to be in that location's inventory, and then you can sell it. So, or it's going to be some method of that. You're not going to get paid until that cargo is manually moved off. And they are going to have an automatic system, apparently, where they'll lock down your ship for, say, 10 minutes. They'll adjust that time over time. They'll figure it out. And they'll automatically load and unload, but it's going to take time. So if you have an efficient crew, it's going to be way faster to do it manually, and that's kind of what they're trying to encourage people to do. And personal and instanced hangars, cargo hauling, all that's going to go along with it. So let's go ahead and read the little blurbs for each of these three. Implementation, this for freight elevators, implementation of system and content for players to physically load and unload cargo to and from their ships by conveying cargo to and from hangars, landing pads, garages, and docking collars. So the docking collars might change a little bit. New missions, cargo hauling. Making use of the freight elevators feature, this mission type will have players hauling large quantities of cargo to earn both AUEC and reputation. So blown up box missions. Personal and instanced hangars, creating new tech that creates an instance of the player's hangar to allow for uninterrupted management of cargo, inventory, and vehicles. Personal hangars are found at the player's home location and allowed for customization, organization of the hangar interior. And the hangar will be sized to the largest ship you have in your fleet when you start. Now, will you get a larger hangar if you buy something bigger in game? So if you have a starter Aurora and that's your only ship in the game and you run bunches of cargo and then you buy a reclaimer, are you going to get the bigger hangar for your personal instance hangar? Don't know. We haven't quite found that part out yet. They will probably let us know in the next week or two, I would assume. Not this week because they don't have any of the shows. So that was the roadmap roundup. Let's go ahead and do the release view. Like I said, I'm going to snap through these. 323 is where all the action is happening. Again, the little orange dots indicate when there's something new. Nothing new in 4.0, which good or bad thing, take it for what it is. New character customizer. I think they are loading in a couple more hairstyles, I wanted to say. I don't think they've dropped this to Evocati yet, so I haven't read those patch notes, but they might have dropped that in. Distribution centers. Okay, so the dots haven't been updated, so we're just going to go. Finally found Maroc. Copion I've been finding everywhere. Maroc, not so much. So let's see. These are all released. Item banks is committed. Freight elevators are committed. It's all here in this section. Tentative is still the dynamic event blockade runner, which I think... No, that's Ninetales. That's actually not Xenothreat. I think there's one more level of Xenothreat. They're just kind of having problems getting it working. New missions, cargo hauling. Let's see what else we got down here. Personal instance hangars. Let's see. I think they just put the ships on here. There's the Pulse Medevac and Tractor, Firebird. New weapons, dynamic crosshair. Yeah, nothing else is new there. So that's the release view. So I am going to actually break out this bad boy for the next section. So this is where we're going to talk about the future of medical gameplay. I actually meant to include this when I did the Medevac video, but I forgot because I'm old. But this is actor status tier 2. And so this is one that I was pointing out a lot in the last couple of years when I was doing sprint watches. This one's been going on for 29 weeks. And if you look at the teams view, which is up here, and go down to the actor feature team, which is the one that's working on it, you can see that it's 2 people that are engineering are working on this for 29 weeks. So a fair amount of time. The thing that's interesting about this is that actor status tier 2 looks at a variety of new elements such as hygiene, NPC status tracking, which is obviously related to NPCs, multiple bites, DNA integrity, this is where it starts getting into the medical insurance, cybernetic limbs, and cloning. And so that is the part where that guy says, I've died thousands of times, and regeneration was always the plan. No, it wasn't, because DNA integrity there, we don't quite know what will play into that, but we're pretty sure that the quality of the care, both the tier of the med bed and whoever is administering that care, is gonna matter. There is gonna be a medical mini game around healing a character. It's not just gonna be, oh, my arm's busted, I'm gonna hit the fix arm button and then it'll be fixed. It's not gonna be that way forever. It's just that way right now. So that's what the DNA integrity is that when you respawn, the trauma of the damage, like I was saying in that video, will carry over. And that is sort of where you'll start getting these cybernetic limbs. And the quality of the cybernetic limbs will also depend on your location. So if you're in Area 18, probably grow a new arm. If you're in Pyro, you might be getting a pirate hook until you can get somewhere good. Cloning. So we know that some element of regeneration will require goo. I mean, we know it uses beams, but it also uses goo as kind of a fuel. And you're not going to be able to create those clones without the goo. So you could have a medevac, but if it doesn't have enough goo in there, it's not going to revive you, and you might be final dead, or you'll respawn at like a hospital somewhere else. Even though you've got the medevac there, it doesn't have enough material to actually create your body. So all of that will start adding up. So that's kind of one of the reasons why the medevac commercial was so disappointing, was because CIG knows that this actor status tier 2 is a thing. They have been working on it for a long time. There's no way that they did not know that this is a thing when they made that ad. And that's why it was frustrating to me, is not because they were rewriting what regeneration was going to do, but because they know regeneration is going to be something else, and they have it right here. So they could have just consulted with these guys and been like, how should we make this ad? And then they make the ad based on what the reality is going to be. But also, like I said in that video, they can kind of hand wave it and say, in lore, Robert Space Industries is a big mega corporation, and Star Citizen isn't above being kind of cyberpunk dystopian where it's run by mega corporations and the Empire, but mostly these mega corporations, which are kind of unscrupulous. So there you go. That's the medical take. Going on to the next one, I wanted to compare the Liberator and the Ironclad. So just going down the numbers on the sides of the size of things. Liberator is 119, Ironclad is 120 long. The beam, which is the width of the ship, is the Liberator 67 meters and the Ironclad is 52. So Liberator is a bit wider. This is kind of one of those things I was talking about. And then height, again, is negligible. 25 for the Liberator, 20 for the Ironclad. Everybody's saying the Ironclad is going to be a Liberator killer. The way I see it is the Liberator, at least in the concept art, was kind of shown as this lander. It's not really a lander. I see the Liberator more as a spaceship mover, so it's moving things that fly. The Ironclad is moving things that go on the ground. It does have the big open top, which is kind of where the community is worried about the Ironclad assault. Right now, the theory if you look at this, this is the Ironclad and it has this open roof. People are saying, well, wait a minute, will the Ironclad Assault have that open roof? And I think it will. It would make sense if the roof opens. You look at the pictures of it. So one of the things people are keying on. So if you click on this, it says cargo access retractable armored roof. And then if you come down here to the Ironclad Assault, it doesn't have that button. But if you look at the geometry, it clearly looks like it's the same roof. They just wanted to focus on the fortified ramp and the turret. So they're saying it has everything this one has, but it also has an armored ramp and the fortified entrance, whatever. And the command module is the same, but it's got the bigger guns underneath and it's got the pair of guns there and pair of guns there. So, I wouldn't be as concerned. It is a question that we need an answer to. The community was right to make that the #1 upvoted question because I could easily be wrong there. I think if the outcry at this point in development is high enough, CIG will make it so that opens. I just think that having that open probably won't be as useful as people think it is. Remember, this is narrower than the Liberator. And so let's go back to the Liberator. Now, again, remember this is concept art, but the Liberator is wider, and that is, that's funny. I think that is the Mark II, and it was sitting in front of us the whole time. It might be the Mark I. I think that is the Mark I. Anyways, that is how wide it is. So the Ironclad is narrower than this by 5 meters. The ships that will fit on this thing, for those who are trying to do the math, that's about 15 feet. So consider the entry of that to probably be closer to this under here. So the Ironclad is probably that width rather than this width. Of course, the Liberator does have these things on the side of it, but for that sake, so does the Ironclad. It's got kind of these bulky sides on it too, not quite to the same degree the Liberator does, but I think that people who are thinking that this thing is going to be a mini carrier, remember they're the same length. So on the Liberator, this is a double pad and this is a single pad. There's just this room here, so that's like a pad and a half as opposed to 3 pads, but it can carry the ground vehicles, which a Liberator can too. But I think that this thing is obviously made to carry ground vehicles into battle, which is kind of what they originally kind of teased the Liberator is able to do. And a lot of us were looking at it and being like, I wouldn't land that thing in a combat zone. I would fly it with my fleet and let fighters land and kind of use it as a point of, or a sort of micro base or pocket carrier in space. I wouldn't land it on the ground unless it was safe. This thing I would land on the ground. One thing that I think is cool about the Ironclad, one of the reasons I grabbed it, was kind of theory crafting, which is always dangerous to do in Star Citizen. One of the things I think is possible with this thing is, again, this is something that we should definitely bitch about, because the command module for the Caterpillar, which this one is, I mean, it sure looks like the same command module, which would be cool if it is, because it's 2 floors. It's got a living space in it. There are snubs that are smaller than this thing, way smaller than this thing, that have a quantum drive. I would love for this thing to have like a size 1 quantum drive, just so that it could actually go and do things, because what would be ideal is you drop an Ironclad off, either the military or the regular version, and then you just kind of have an immobile base, but it's like a pop-up base. You drop it, this thing goes off and does its thing, or goes and collects caterpillar bodies, flies them down and lands them for stuff, and then flies up, gets another one, and brings it down. That kind of thing. You could have like stacks of caterpillar modules just hanging out in space somewhere. Just have this thing go and grab them and ferry them down, and you've got a base here. And one of the things that's kind of cool about the assault version is it actually has repair, and I believe they say construction facilities. Okay, I'm not sure where it said that, but somewhere it had repair facilities were in here. And while I was clicking around off camera, they wouldn't have this control room over this area if that roof wouldn't open, because if all of this is closed, why would you have something that looks down on a closed roof? You're not going to be controlling anything then. You're just going to be looking at it, because again, the ship is controlled from the command module. It's flown from this thing over here. It's not flown from this little flying bridge that's up here. That's for moving stuff down here. So I am pretty sure that door opens. But anyway, yeah, Ironclad versus the Liberator. Ironclad's newer, so I felt like I needed to talk about it a little bit more. I see them as similar ships in role, but different in how they carry that out and what their target is. Like the Liberator is mostly used to move flyers around, and I would say probably in space, whereas the Ironclad is more meant to land on the ground, and in the Ironclad Assault, very much a landing vehicle. It is meant to get things like the Tonk and the Atlas chassis onto the ground in a combat zone, as opposed to landing like the C2 or the M2 do a ways off and letting them drive in. This thing can come right down into the thick of the fight and unleash an army. 36 infantry soldiers, 4 Tonks. That's a serious amount of firepower. They still haven't quite explained how that will combat against ships, but we'll probably find out eventually. Eventually we'll probably be fighting over platforms and stuff like that that a ship just can't get down into. But anyway, so there we go. Ironclad, Liberator. I think that it depends on what you want to do. Like with the Liberator, you could put a few prospectors on it, and it's kind of the central hub to refuel the prospectors, repair them if they get blown up, change out modules and stuff like that. Liberator is the same thing, but for the ground. You could use it as a central base for a military campaign on the ground, or you could use it as like a central base for fabrication, like construction, or mining, like with rocks and stuff like that. Like land that right outside cave with a lot of was it Janelite, whatever the new stuff is, or Haydenite or whatever, and send them in that way. Let's go to this. Star Citizen just went over $700 million. As of today, they're $703,544,249. In theory, 5,243,807 Star Citizens. I would say probably cut that in at least half. I know for myself, I have 4 accounts, and I know a couple of my friends do too. You can balance that off by the people who either had a starting pack gifted to them or bought one starting pack ages ago and haven't logged in since. So it probably balances out eventually, but 5.2 million people, not bad. But let's go on down. So I'll just show this one from a couple years ago because I kind of want to make a point on this. So it's kind of telling that the person that made this, their account has been deleted, so they probably moved away. This is as of 22 2022, and it's midway through the year. So obviously they made a lot more money than this. But the articles that are out there that kind of say Star Citizen has $700 million and they don't have a game yet. They are developing the games, and they didn't start with 700 million. This was kind of the first one that they did where they were just kind of like doing their own crowdfunding, and they realized, oh, wait a minute, we're not nearly organized enough to get this much money and interest. We've become a meme. Oh God. 2013 was the actual Kickstarter, and that's where they got all of their stretch goals, some of which got them in trouble, and they made 28 million. So with that, they were able to hire a lot more people, but they also expanded the scope of the game. 2014, they made 32 million. So this is pretty good here, and it gave them the base. But you think about it, year over year, this is not a gigantic amount of money when you're trying to build now 5 studios with I think at last count like 2,000 employees. The support for all those 2,000 employees, all of that stuff costs money. So I did a video, I think like 2 years back, where I was talking about CIG's burn rate, and that's how much money they're taking in versus how much they're spending. And my general thought was they're not redlining it, so they're not going negative with their spending, but it's probably close. Running all of those things, renting all those properties, probably one of the reasons why they really slimmed down the LA office and started letting people like Todd Pappy go, is to kind of make these numbers work. Like, you have to run the business. You have a fiduciary responsibility to the people that have given you all this money. So it's not like they got $700 million in 2012 and then just sat on it for 10 years. They slowly built up. They got 28 million from the Kickstarter, realized they had to make a whole new game than what they were thinking. 2 games. They didn't have to do that, but that's what they chose to do. And honestly, I'm here for it. While I like the idea of Squadron 42, I'm here for the PU. And I think most people playing I'd say almost everybody playing the game right now is playing the game for the PU, because Squadron 42 hasn't dropped yet. So anyone that's playing the game now is obviously playing it for the PU. Anyways, so they probably had a little bit more money than they needed in 2013, but they started to use that to build the infrastructure, get servers, get technical personnel, build up things like payroll and HR, things like that, just kind of get themselves to the point. This is all planning. This was probably money in the bank in 2013. 2014, they actually started having to spend it. And with 32 million there, almost 33, then they start spending it. And you can sort of see that their funding numbers go up and up and up and up. But so does the cost of running the company. And that's sort of why when you see it hit 2020, of course, they saw a big spike there because of the pandemic. People were stuck at home. So what else are you going to do but sit around and play your spaceship game? This guy. But that's just kind of what I wanted to say about the 700 million. They didn't start with 700 million in 2012, and that's a very disingenuous argument to sort of say they have 700 million dollars and they haven't gotten one game out yet. There are games out there, like it's always being compared to GTA 6. I think GTA 6 is up to like $2 billion in its production, and it is a narrower focus game than Star Citizen. It is one city. It is multiplayer. I don't believe it's massively multiplayer. I haven't followed the production that much, but $2 billion, that's with a B. Yeah, and production time that's similar, but these things take time. They take time. So if I were telling you that they were spending 70,000 or 70 million a year or 80 million a year, you'd kind of go, wow, that's a lot of money, because to us it's a lot of money. But when you start thinking about the production on this scale, it's not actually that much money for what they're trying to do for any game company, not just CIG. But anyway, just want to say that. yeah, that's really all I got, gang. So I will see you when I get back. I've got a couple movies, got a couple episodes loaded up that'll drop in the next couple weeks. So keep an eye out for those, and see you when I get back. Catch you next time.